um, this last Sunday of the year. I am glad to be here with you. Hopefully, you're glad to be here, and probably like me, you're kind of waiting for the end of this year to be over and get started on something new. Just wanted to go over a couple of things with you this morning before I get into a very short message today. The short message today is going to be what we used to call a SIM message, SIM. SIM is short for, it's the acronym for short inspirational message. And we did that for months when we were training before we ever launched GTM. And so I'm going to give you a SIM today. But first of all, letting you know as we end this year, we are ending this year with the focus on next year, where we're talking about 2026. And in 2026, the focus is really on the year of infinite mindset. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But I do want to remind everybody that today is GTM Family First Sunday. So there's no in service, no in person service there at the church. But we are live for you, and it's just a few minutes. Don't want to take too much of your time today, but we do want to get your mindset for 2026. And another thing that we want to mention is the 21-day Daniel fast coming up next Sunday, which is January 4th. And we'll be doing that for 21 days. You will receive an email and then a text message letting you know that you got the email, so you know when to look for that. But those documents will be in your email box. Or if you don't have an email with us, we're also posting them online on our groups page for Facebook. And so it's starting next Sunday, and we are going through the 25th. All right. So that's kind of it for announcements. And I wanted to really just get right into what I've prepared for you today. And that's talking about 2026, the year of the infinite mindset. What we'll do today is go over a little bit of what this is about, and also the uh, what you ended up with last week on the weekly challenge. We'll go over that a little bit today so that you can focus on your homework. There was 7 days of homework. You could have picked it. We had actually 15 days, I think, 14 days. But you can pick any one that works for you. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But the year of the infinite mindset. Infinite, of course, I don't think I need to tell you what that means, but it's forever. And the mindset of being infinite is that there's nothing that runs out. It goes on and on and on. The inspiration for that particular theme for the year was from a book um, by Simon Sinek. I think the name of the book is The Infinite Game. But it's some good concepts in there, especially if you'd like to read that book. He's talking about, and it's basically for businesses, for leadership. It's a leadership book, and he talks about in that particular book the difference in finite game and infinite games. And so, with an infinite game, the game never ends. The goal of an infinite game is to keep the game going. Whereas the goal of finite games is to somebody wins and somebody loses. And so a lot of businesses adapt that approach, and they talk about it every year. And then, like this year, there are businesses that are ramping up for 2026, and they're trying to win, which means some other business has to lose. And they do their quarterly, their annuals to measure whether they win or lose. Well, in an infinite game, the goal is not to win and somebody else lose. Although I think I did a message, wow, I think it was 2016. And I believe the title of that message for New Year's Day, the first Sunday after New Year's, was um, not let the games begin, but it was still talking about winning the game. And now I want to talk about an infinite mindset where it's not about winning the game, it's the entire process of the whole thing. And so that's why you'll see, hopefully you can see on your screen there where it says declarations, proclamations. So this is a year of infinite mindset where we're declaring what God has already said, and we're proclaiming it as individuals. And we're doing that as individuals, but also declaring it for others, and when we pray. So this is not just about personal. This is implementing a lot of the things, a lot of the messages that we talked about last year. This is about implementing those things in our lives where we are actually on mission for God and doing what he said to do. So we're going to declare what he said, what he already said. We're going to proclaim it for ourselves and for others. And we're going to have the mindset that it's not about me winning and someone else losing, but it's about all of us actually actively experiencing what God has already promised. And so, as you see on the bottom of that image there, it says managing time and change. That's a big one for us this year, many times, and that has to do with planning. Because when we pray, we learned last week that we need to plan whatever we're asking God to do. We need to get involved in the planning of that. And so last week we talked about where God first gave man authority and told him to have authority over the earth, to replenish it. I'm not going to go specifically over this, but I want to highlight a couple of things where he said, replenish the earth, subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, where basically God gave man authority over the earth. And man, we talked about this last week, but man gave that up to Satan. And that was the whole purpose for Christmas, was for God to restore authority back to man in the earth. And so last week we talked about it in Galatians, where Paul said, when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth his son. He sent forth his son. And even as Isaiah said, a child is born, but a son is given. So the son was Jesus Christ himself, the divine part of Christ. And it's made of a woman. That was the human side of him, and made under the law. And so Jesus came, and in the fullness of time, he fulfilled that, bringing back that authority to earth and getting it back from the enemy spiritually. And just before Jesus left the earth in Matthew 28 and 18, he said, he came and he said to them, all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. All power in heaven and in earth. Now, why would Jesus need to say that if he already had all power? He said, all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. So he's always ruled in heaven, and earth power was given up by Adam and Eve. And now he's saying it's all given to me. And so he gave us a command after that. He gave it to his disciples, which were to be filtrated all the way through us. He said, go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe everything that I've commanded you. And so, and then don't forget this, I am with you always, even to the end of the world. And so Jesus is with us, and we have the authority, and we are to execute that authority. And we do that through what we're going to talk about next year. A lot of that has to do with prayer and purpose and planning. I'm excited about that. We're not going to really get into it today, but what sets us up for that is the challenge for this ending of the year. But in that challenge, we have what I call, we're talking about restoring authority in the challenge. And so the purpose of the challenge is to recognize, let's just go over it again. We talked about it last week. Christmas was not merely an arrival of comfort and joy, but it was to return that delegated authority. And so the fulfillment of that authority through Jesus is about partnership with us. And we are partnering with God in the earth to bring back the authority. Where there was chaos, we should bring back, organization, and through Jesus Christ, in implementing the very things that he taught. And so we are now doing that. So I gave some steps. I mentioned some steps last week, and we didn't go over them at all. But if you were physically at the church, there were handouts, and on the back side of the handout were 7 action steps. So you can select from any of the 7 days and practice. What you're practicing to do is to improve your responsibility and your authority. They go together. And you're starting to practice. Get started this year before the year ends. You have a few more days, 2 or 3 more days, right? You have a few more days to finish up before the end of the year to improve your responsibility and your authority. Because what you're doing is you are reclaiming and exercising your authority as you declare daily. Declare. That's what next year is all about. It's all about declarations and proclamations. We're declaring what God has said. So it's not always about getting into a posture, what we call a religious posture of prayer, where we are on our knees, but all day long, as things come up that are different than what you expect, different than what God promised, declare what he promised right in the face of it. So declare daily what God has said about you, what God has said about others, especially those that you care about, and even those that you don't care about, that are not in your fear, where you're engaging with them daily. I shouldn't say you don't care about them. I think you do, but people in your community, people in your country, leaders in your country, all of that. So let's improve our responsibility, our personal responsibility about that, and allow God to use us as vessels. So here's day one. Day one really is about reclaiming that responsibility. So the focus is authority begins with ownership, where you're owning it. You're taking ownership of it. And I took some of this and used it with our family on Christmas Day when we do gifts. Typically, when we do gifts, what we do is let me see if I can do something here. What we typically do is we do stockings, and first of all, we do all the gifts, and then after we do the gifts, we do the stockings. And then the stockings, I usually have a card, and everybody gets some kind of monetary gift from me. And this year, instead of just having a card with a couple of things on it, I wrote out a proclamation for each person. I took some time, I prayed, and asked God to give me a word for every individual. And then so I proclaimed and declared for them for next year what I believe God has purpose. And really all that is I'm declaring what I believe God's purpose is for that individual based on what I know about them and what I believe God wants to do. And so it was very moving. But that's what we want to do throughout the entire next year for each other. We want to make proclamations, not just for ourselves, but for others. Share those declarations with them. Here's what I believe God is saying based on who you are and based on what I see. And I believe in it. And it's really like prophesying. And that's a word that sometimes scares some people. But, I've been reading the Old Testament. I'm all the way up through finish the book of Psalms now. But in there, I got to studying about the first king of Israel, which is Saul, and who was very not spiritual at all. But there were times when he was with the prophets and he was prophesying, and he was really which means that he was proclaiming the purposes of God for individuals. And that's what we're doing. We're proclaiming the purpose of God for individuals, for ourselves, in the face of whatever circumstances and situations come up, we are proclaiming that in for not just for ourselves, but for others also. And so that the day one is reclaiming that responsibility. We're owning it. We're taking it. So the practice is to identify one area of your life that you've been blaming on circumstances, systems, or other people. And we all have done this. And then, but say this out loud in writing, and I would say both. But just say, I take full responsibility for what I can influence. I take full responsibility for what I can influence. That's very powerful. I take full responsibility for the things that I can influence, whatever I can influence. I may not be able to do everything about it and turn the whole thing around, but I have some influence about it. And so I'm going to take full responsibility because God has given me back the authority. So I'm going to take full responsibility for the things that I can influence. Because authority can't operate where responsibility is avoided. If we avoid the responsibility, even though God has given us back the authority, then authority can't operate. So we want you to actually engage, reclaim the responsibility, own it, say, I own this. This is not personally mine, but I'm going to own it and make sure that this happens. That's day one. You can pick that day. I think that's you should pick that day, even if you don't pick any others, because that's the beginning. Okay, day two, and you can mix these up, but I would suggest you do day one first. But all the rest of these you can mix up, except for the last one you do want to do at the end. But any of these other ones you can mix up any days. But day two, align your decisions. Your focus here is your authority flows through alignment. God has given us back alignment. He's given us back authority. Now we have to align that with his purpose. And so the practice is, before making one decision today, pause and ask, does this reflect my values? Your values should be in alignment with God's purposes. And so before making any decisions today, I'm going to pause and ask, does this reflect my values? And does this move my life toward order, peace, and growth? Does it move? If it doesn't move it towards me growing, if it doesn't move it towards peace, in other words, if the decisions I'm making is going to create chaos or carry on chaos that someone else has started, or disorder, then I'm not going to move my authority in that direction, because you have authority. So what you should say is, I choose alignment over impulse. There's going to be some things you're going to impulsively want to say or do, but you're going to say, I choose aligning my values with God's purposes over my impulses. And you're going to remember this: restored authority is not power to dominate. So you're not trying to dominate others. It's the wisdom to choose. And you have that. You have the Spirit of God on the inside of you. You do have the wisdom. Just execute it and carry it out and do that. So that's day two. Day three, picking this one. Use your words to create and not tear down or destroy. So some of us, more than others, need to make sure we pick day three, and that is when you use your words. If you're a person who usually have a lot of words to share with a lot of people, this is probably one that you want to pick. Some of us, we're quiet anyway, and we need to use some of these other ones. But use your words to create. God gave us the authority, gave us a brain, gave us a mind, so that we could use our imagination. And that's really one of the ways, and we're going to get into this next year, where we're using our imagination for planning, because planning is the one thing that pulls the future into today. And you use your imagination to do that. As you sit down, plan, write, take notes, where this is talking about using your words to create in the face of others. So the focus is, authority is exercised through words. God has given you authority. He's given us authority, and we exercise that through words. So here's where you practice. Be intentional with your speech today. So pick a day where you're going to be intentional with your speech. So say this: I will speak clarity instead of confusion. I will encourage instead of criticize. These are so easy for us. Criticizing is so easy for us to do. And continuing someone else's confusion, even if you don't start it, is easy for us to do. but instead you're saying, I will speak clarity instead of confusion. I will encourage instead of criticize. I will name solutions rather than rehearse problems. Remember that one. Name some solutions rather than rehearsing problems over and over and over again. Say what the solution is, declare what it is, and use your words to create what you are expecting. And remember this, in Genesis, authority was expressed through naming and speaking. Remember, God gave Adam the authority. He named all the animals. Think about that. Every single animal Adam named. And Christmas restores that capacity to us. It's not magic, but we take the responsibility as we exercise that authority. All right, day 4. So day 4, bring order to one space. You're just going to focus on one space. You're going to use your authority and bring some order to one space. Your focus here is authority brings order where chaos was and does exist. So authority is what brings that order, and you want to bring some order to some areas in your life. So practice one area, whether it's your schedule. If you need to bring order to your schedule, this is one of the ones that I'm focusing on because sometimes, especially if you have a lot of things to do and you're busy, you need to almost schedule every single thing in your life. And that's what I'm learning, because if it doesn't get scheduled, a lot of times it doesn't get done. If it's not on my calendar, sometimes it doesn't happen. And so this year, I'm focusing to bring in order to that one space for sure. And my finances, my home, order in my home, order in relationships, order in my business, where you're going to bring some structure and boundaries and clarity to it. Remember, authority isn't loud. It's just stabilizing. It's just where you are putting some things in order. You're setting some boundaries, saying, I can't do this. I can, because when you set boundaries, when you say I'm going to do one thing and you set order, you're actually setting a boundary. That means that there's other things that you can't do and that you won't do. If I'm going to do this, and this is one thing that my wife, Pastor Thomasine, reminds me of a lot of times. I'll say I'm going to do this, say I'm going to do that, and by the time I'm done, I'm going to say I'm going to do 10 things, and I only have time to do 5. And then when the 5 that got ignored, and not necessarily on purpose, I just couldn't get to them, then I'm apologizing because I couldn't get them done. And that's not a good way to live, not a good way to exercise authority, because things just don't get done. And so I'm learning to align myself with my purpose and actually schedule some things that I need to get done. And we're going to do that for ministry. We're going to do that for our home. We're going to do that for our businesses. And we're doing that for especially my schedule. And so that's one area. So pick an area. That's four areas. That's a day 4. Here's day 5. Day 5 is serve without shrinking. Here's what I mean by that. Focus. Your authority, you have authority, but authority and humility works together. Authority and humility work together. When many times when we get authority, we lose all humility because now I'm the man. I got authority. I can, and many people feel that way. Even if you don't say it like that, you feel like I'm somebody now because I have authority, and therefore you start exercising it, telling folks what to do. Well, serve without shrinking. Serve, be a servant with humility. And here's the way you want to practice that. Serve somebody today. Pick a day this week where you're going to serve somebody, but not from insecurity, not from a place of, being weak and you're serving them because you feel like you have to, or anyway, serve from strength, serve from a place of dignity, serve from a place of choice. One of the things that I learned from he was CEO for a while, but basically he was well known for the Chick-fil-A brand, where he actually not just Chick-fil-A, but for the hotel chain that has a lot of dignity. And he taught the people that serve other people that you want to serve from strength, serve from dignity. Even though you're serving, and most of the guests in these upper hotels were big, dignitaries, but he wanted them to not feel like they were some servant with their heads bowed down. He was like, serve with strength, serve with dignity, serve with choice. You chose to serve them. And that's who you are. And that's the way we need to take on the spirit of serving. Jesus, he modeled authority through serving. He had all authority especially after he had risen from the dead. And he said, and he modeled that whatever authority he had in the earth when he was on earth, he always prayed, received that authority, and executed. But it's not submitting to dysfunction. Christmas restores that authority that we can help lift others out of, and do that without losing our own identity. So serve somebody today with authority, but also exercising humility. Then day six, resist what diminishes life. Don't let things that takes away from you and others actually take over what you are doing. Resist what diminishes life. In other words, your focus with authority includes resistance. You have the authority. Learn to say no. That's really what this is all about. Learn to say no to things that drain your integrity, things that drain your energy, things that weakens your focus, things that pulls you away from your purpose. Say no to those things. Learn to say no to those things. And remember this, restored authority includes the power to resist what doesn't belong. When something doesn't belong, resist it. And so resist what diminishes life. That's day 6. And then finally, day 7, reflect and recommit. Day 7, that's why I put it last, is whatever days you do this, even if you don't do all 7 of them, if you pick one and do it more than one day, day 1 and day 7 needs to be the first and last one that you do. Day 7, you want to reflect and recommit. In other words, your focus here is authority grows through awareness. You want to be aware of how you're doing. Your practice is you want to ask yourself, where did I act with restored authority this week? Where did I act with restored authority where I'm recognizing and acknowledging that God has given me authority? And where did I act with this week? And where did I give it away? Just like Adam did sometimes. Where did I give up that authority and allow something else to have its place? And the last question here is, what will I manage better next week? What will I steward better next week? How can I improve on this? So you want to reflect and recommit. Reflect how you did, recommit to doing better. So that's what day 7 is all about. And of course, for the rest of this week, you got many of you're off work for the rest of the year. And what you want to do is journal as much as possible this week. I know we had Christmas this last week coming up, but this week, then see if you can journal on our Facebook page, and journal even if you don't do it on Facebook page. But we share some of what you're doing, some of what the challenges the days that you are taking. Share some of that and use the hashtag 2026 Change Infinite Mindset. Change Infinite Mindset. And that's our goal getting into next year. And I'm excited about next year. I'm excited about being with you next year. I'm excited about pouring into you next year the very things that I believe is going to improve your life, the very things that I believe will improve who you are, improve how you can serve, not just at your home, but at work and even in ministry, where we can be better at who we are and better at what we do. And so let's see, how much of your time did I take today? Ooh, about 30 minutes, a little bit more. But thank you. God bless you, and have yourself a very good start for next year. And let me know how you're doing. And one of the things I'm planning to do is put some stuff in the church app. When you go through today's message later, I'll have some notes in there where you can fill some stuff out just to get keep your mind engaged into finding the answers for the things that we believe that you need to do. So God bless you and have a wonderful end of the year.